What is definition of basic psychological needs in self-determination theory? Hi, I hope you are doing well. Today, as usual, you will join Your Motivation University with the usual intimacy. Today, we are talking about definition of basic psychological needs in self-determination theory. We hope to reveal many very important and wonderful facts about definition of basic psychological needs in self-determination theory in this video. We invite you to stay with Your Motivation University until the last few seconds of this special video. Self-determination theory, SDT, represents one of the most comprehensive frameworks for understanding human motivation, personality development, and psychological well-being. At its core, SDT posits that humans have three innate psychological needs that, when satisfied, promote optimal functioning, growth, and well-being. These basic psychological needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, serve as the essential nutrients for psychological health and vitality across cultures, contexts, and the lifespan. This report explores in depth how these basic psychological needs are defined within self-determination theory, their theoretical foundations, empirical support, and significance for understanding human motivation and behavior. Self-determination theory, developed by Edward L. Deci and Richard Ryan, emerged from research in the 1970s that compared intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, recognizing the dominant role that intrinsic motivation plays in human behavior. The theory was formally introduced in the mid-1980s with the publication of Deci and Ryan's seminal book, Intrinsic Motivation and Self-Determination in Human Behavior, which established SDT as a scientifically grounded framework for understanding motivation. Since then, SDT has evolved into a macro theory of human motivation that encompasses several mini-theories, including basic needs theory, which specifically addresses the role of psychological needs in motivation and well-being. SDT is rooted in what its developers call an organismic dialectical perspective, which views humans as active organisms naturally inclined toward growth, mastering challenges, and integrating new experiences into a coherent sense of self. This perspective recognizes that people are inherently proactive and growth-oriented, but also acknowledges that this natural tendency requires supportive conditions to flourish. According to SDT, social environments can either foster or hinder a person's natural inclination towards psychological growth and integration by supporting or thwarting their basic psychological needs. This dialectic between inherent growth tendencies and environmental conditions forms the foundation for understanding how basic psychological needs operate in human development and functioning. Unlike many motivational theories that focus solely on the strength or amount of motivation, SDT distinguishes between different types or qualities of motivation. The theory differentiates between autonomous motivation, where behavior stems from one's integrated sense of self and intrinsic interests, and controlled motivation, where behavior is regulated by external contingencies or internal pressures. Research consistently shows that autonomous motivation leads to more effective performance, greater persistence, enhanced creativity, and better psychological well-being compared to controlled motivation. Basic psychological needs play a crucial role in this distinction, as need satisfaction energizes autonomous forms of motivation, while need frustration contributes to controlled motivation, or amotivation. The development of SDT has resulted in 6 mini-theories, each addressing different aspects of motivation and psychological functioning. Cognitive evaluation theory, organismic integration theory, causality orientations theory, basic needs theory, goal contents theory, and relationship motivation theory. Among these, basic needs theory, BNT, specifically defines and elaborates on the nature of basic psychological needs and their relationship to psychological well-being and optimal functioning. BNT proposes that the needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness are universal across development and culture, and that their satisfaction is essential for psychological health and well-being. This mini-theory provides the theoretical framework for understanding how and why basic psychological needs are fundamental to human motivation and thriving. Within self-determination theory, basic psychological needs are defined as innate psychological nutriments that are essential for ongoing psychological growth, integrity, and well-being. This conceptualization distinguishes SDT's approach from other theories of motivation that focus on learned needs, drives, or goals. In SDT, basic needs are not acquired through learning or socialization, but are inherent aspects of human psychology that manifest across development and cultures, though their expression and the means of their satisfaction may vary contextually. The satisfaction of these needs is considered necessary, not just beneficial, for psychological health and optimal functioning. The concept of basic psychological needs in SDT specifies both the content, what must be satisfied, and the functional significance, why it matters, of these needs. In terms of content, SDT identifies three distinct but interrelated needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. These needs represent fundamental psychological nutriments that all humans require, just as physical needs like food, water, and shelter are required for physical health. In terms of functional significance, these needs are considered essential because their satisfaction promotes psychological growth, internalization, and well-being, while their frustration leads to diminished motivation, performance, and psychological health. SDT's approach to needs differs significantly from drive theories, which conceptualize needs as deficit states that create tension until they are reduced. Instead, SDT views basic psychological needs as nutriments that, when satisfied, promote growth and well-being rather than merely reducing deficits. This growth-oriented perspective aligns with the organismic approach of SDT, which emphasizes humans' natural tendencies toward development and integration. Unlike learned needs theories that suggest needs are acquired through socialization, SDT proposes that the three basic needs are innate, though their expression may be shaped by social and cultural contexts. The universality claim for basic psychological needs represents one of the more controversial aspects of SDT, particularly in relation to cross-cultural psychology perspectives that emphasize cultural variation in values and motivational processes. However, SDT researchers maintain that while the pathways to need satisfaction may differ across cultures, the needs themselves are universal, and their satisfaction consistently predicts well-being across diverse cultural contexts. Research supporting this view includes cross-cultural studies showing that autonomy, competence, and relatedness satisfaction predicts psychological well-being in both Western, individualistic, and Eastern, collectivistic cultures, suggesting that the basic needs concept has cross-cultural validity despite differences in how needs might be expressed or satisfied in different cultural contexts. In self-determination theory, the need for autonomy refers to experiencing a sense of volition, choice, and self-endorsement in one's actions. It involves feeling that one's behavior emanates from and is congruent with one's authentic self rather than being controlled by external forces or internal pressures. A critical distinction in SDT's definition of autonomy is that it does not equate to independence, individualism, or detachment from others, a common misunderstanding that has led to cross-cultural critiques of the theory. Rather, autonomy concerns the experience of psychological freedom and self-determination, regardless of whether one's actions are independent from or interdependent with others. Autonomy is satisfied when individuals feel they are the origin of their behavior and fully endorse the actions in which they engage. This experience is characterized by feelings of willingness, choice, and congruence between one's behavior and one's authentic interests, values, and preferences. Autonomy satisfaction occurs when people perceive their behavior as self-determined and integrated with their sense of self, even when influenced by external sources such as requests or suggestions from others. The key distinction is whether one feels a sense of volition and choice or a sense of pressure and control. Research has demonstrated that autonomy support enhances intrinsic motivation and promotes internalization of extrinsic motivation. When people are provided with meaningful rationales for activities, acknowledged for their feelings and perspectives, offered choices within appropriate limits, and minimized in exposure to controlling contingencies, their autonomy needs are more likely to be satisfied. Conversely, controlling contexts that pressure people to think, feel, or behave in specific ways thwart autonomy needs. Studies have found that offering extrinsic rewards for intrinsically motivated behavior can undermine intrinsic motivation by diminishing the sense of autonomy, as can other controlling elements such as deadlines, surveillance, and evaluations. The importance of autonomy is further highlighted by research showing that situations supporting autonomy, as opposed to controlling it, enhance not only intrinsic motivation, but also performance, learning, creativity, and psychological well-being. Studies have found that people are even willing to pay money to have caused an outcome themselves, providing direct evidence for the innate need for autonomy. Additionally, autonomy support from others, such as parents, teachers, healthcare providers, or managers, contributes significantly to need satisfaction, autonomous motivation, and positive outcomes across various life domains. These findings underscore the crucial role of autonomy in facilitating psychological growth, internalization, and well-being, consistent with SDT's definition of basic psychological needs. The need for competence refers to the experience of effectiveness and mastery in one's interactions with the social and physical environment. It involves feeling capable of achieving desired outcomes, effectively responding to challenges, and developing one's skills and abilities over time. The concept of competence in SDT draws from earlier work by Robert White on effectance motivation, which emphasized humans' inherent desire to have an effect on their environment and to attain valued outcomes. Competence satisfaction provides people with a sense of confidence and efficacy in their actions, supporting active engagement with challenges and the ongoing development of capabilities. Competence is satisfied when individuals experience opportunities to exercise and express their capacities, take on optimal challenges, and receive feedback that acknowledges effective performance. This need is fulfilled when people feel they are developing and growing in their skills, successfully overcoming challenges, and achieving valued outcomes. The satisfaction of competence needs facilitates intrinsic motivation, as people naturally gravitate toward activities in which they feel effective and capable. When environments provide the structure and informational feedback necessary for effective functioning, competence needs are more likely to be met, enhancing motivation and performance. The frustration of competence needs occurs when people repeatedly experience failure, face challenges that far exceed their current capabilities, or receive negative feedback that undermines their sense of efficacy. Environments that offer little opportunity for growth, provide overly critical feedback, or set unrealistic expectations can thwart competence needs, leading to reduced motivation, diminished effort, and lower well-being. Similarly, contexts that are overly controlling or that emphasize social comparison rather than personal improvement can undermine competence satisfaction, even when individuals are objectively successful in their endeavors. Importantly, SDT posits that competence alone is not sufficient to enhance intrinsic motivation and well-being. The theory suggests that competence satisfaction will not yield optimal outcomes unless accompanied by a sense of autonomy. People must feel not only effective in their actions, but also experience those actions as self-determined rather than controlled. This highlights the integrated nature of the basic psychological needs, with optimal functioning requiring the satisfaction of competence in conjunction with autonomy. Additionally, competence often has social dimensions, with feedback and acknowledgement from others playing important roles in competence experiences, thus connecting this need to relatedness as well. The need for relatedness refers to the desire to feel connected to and cared for by others, to experience a sense of belonging, and to develop close and satisfying relationships. It involves caring for others as well as feeling cared for, and experiencing oneself as part of meaningful social bonds and communities. Relatedness satisfaction provides people with a sense of social connection and security that supports exploration, growth, and well-being. The concept of relatedness in SDT acknowledges the fundamentally social nature of human beings and the importance of positive social connections for psychological health and optimal functioning. Relatedness is satisfied when individuals experience warm, trusting, and supportive interpersonal relationships, and when they feel significant and valued by important others. This involves mutual care and concern, genuine interest and responsiveness, and a sense of belonging and connection with individuals and groups that matter to the person. Relatedness satisfaction supports psychological health and promotes the internalization of social values and practices, as people are more likely to adopt and internalize the values and behaviors endorsed by those to whom they feel connected. The experience of relatedness also provides a secure base from which people can explore, take risks, and develop their autonomy and competence. The frustration of relatedness needs occurs when people experience rejection, exclusion, or neglect from important others or social groups. Environments characterized by coldness, hostility, or indifference thwart relatedness needs, leading to defensive behaviors, reduced well-being, and in extreme cases, psychological distress. SDT distinguishes between genuine relatedness, satisfaction, and substitutes for relatedness, such as superficial approval-seeking or defensive attachment, which may temporarily alleviate relatedness frustration but do not provide true need satisfaction. Genuine relatedness involves authentic connection rather than conditional regard or instrumental relationships. While early SDT research sometimes portrayed relatedness as playing a more distal role in intrinsic motivation compared to autonomy and competence, more recent theoretical developments have emphasized its crucial importance. Relationship motivation theory, RMT, a mini-theory within SDT, specifically examines how high-quality relationships satisfy all three basic psychological needs, with relatedness being most directly affected. According to RMT, truly fulfilling relationships not only satisfy relatedness needs, but also support autonomy through mutual respect for each other's volition and competence through opportunities for growth and effective interaction. This integrated view highlights how the three basic needs work together to promote optimal relationship functioning and psychological well-being. Self-determination theory takes a universalistic perspective regarding basic psychological needs, proposing that the needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness are innate and universal across age, gender, and culture. This claim represents one of the more controversial aspects of the theory, particularly in relation to cross-cultural perspectives that emphasize cultural variation in values, motivations, and psychological functioning. The universality claim does not suggest that the expression or means of satisfying these needs will be identical across cultures, but rather that the needs themselves are universal, and their satisfaction consistently predicts well-being regardless of cultural context. The universality claim has been challenged, particularly regarding the need for autonomy, which has sometimes been misinterpreted as referring to independence or individualism. Critics have argued that autonomy may be more valued in Western, individualistic cultures than in Eastern, collectivistic ones. However, SDT researchers counter this critique by emphasizing that autonomy in SDT refers to the experience of volition and self-endorsement, not independence or individualism. From this perspective, autonomy is fully compatible with collectivistic values and interdependence, as long as one's collectivistic behaviors are experienced as volitional and self-endorsed, rather than coerced or controlled. Research supporting the universality claim includes cross-cultural studies showing that satisfaction of all three basic needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, predicts well-being across diverse cultural contexts. For example, studies have found that autonomy satisfaction predicts well-being even in collectivistic cultures, suggesting that while the pathways to satisfying autonomy may differ across cultures, the need itself remains important universally. Similarly, the search results highlight a cross-cultural study examining the contribution of basic psychological needs, satisfaction to psychological well-being among older adults in China and France, which found that need satisfaction predicted well-being in both cultures, despite their substantial differences in cultural values and orientations. The universality of basic psychological needs across the lifespan is also supported by research showing that need satisfaction contributes to well-being from early childhood through old age. While the specific manifestations and relative salience of needs may vary across developmental stages, with relatedness perhaps being more prominent in early childhood and later life, and autonomy becoming particularly important during adolescence, the fundamental importance of all three needs appears consistent throughout development. This developmental perspective supports the view that basic psychological needs represent innate psychological nutriments rather than learned desires or culturally specific values, reinforcing SDT's definition of these needs as universal aspects of human functioning. A central tenet of self-determination theory is that the satisfaction of basic psychological needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness is essential for psychological well-being and optimal functioning. This proposition forms a core element of basic needs theory, one of the many theories within the broader SDT framework. The theory proposes that when these needs are satisfied, people experience greater vitality, self-motivation, and well-being, whereas when the needs are thwarted, people experience diminished motivation, performance, and well-being. This direct relationship between need satisfaction and psychological health has been supported by extensive research across various domains and cultural contexts. The theoretical basis for the connection between basic need satisfaction and well-being lies in the conceptualization of these needs as essential psychological nutriments. Just as physical needs like food, water, and shelter must be satisfied for physical health, psychological needs must be satisfied for psychological health. When needs are satisfied, people have access to the resources necessary for effective self-regulation, engagement with challenges, and meaningful connections with others. This supports not only hedonic well-being but also eudaimonic well-being, including experiences of vitality, meaning, and personal growth. Research has demonstrated that need satisfaction predicts various indicators of well-being, including positive affect, life satisfaction, vitality, and psychological growth, while need frustration predicts ill-being indicators such as negative affect, depression, anxiety, and burnout. Importantly, these relationships have been found at both between-person levels and within-person levels. This multi-level evidence strengthens the case for a causal relationship between need satisfaction and well-being outcomes, consistent with SDT's definition of basic psychological needs as essential for psychological health. The search results highlight the importance of need satisfaction for psychological well-being among older adults, suggesting that the relationship between needs and well-being continues throughout the lifespan. This research found that satisfying basic psychological needs contributed to elderly people's well-being in both Eastern and Western cultures, supporting both the lifespan and cross-cultural universality of basic psychological needs. Such findings demonstrate that even as people age and face different developmental challenges, the satisfaction of their basic psychological needs remains crucial for their psychological health and well-being, further validating SDT's definition of these needs as universal and essential throughout life. Self-determination theory posits that basic psychological needs satisfaction plays a crucial role in facilitating autonomous motivation, which encompasses both intrinsic motivation and well-internalized forms of extrinsic motivation. According to SDT, when people experience satisfaction of their needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness, they are more likely to develop autonomous forms of motivation because their behavior becomes more congruent with their authentic values, interests, and goals. This results in more effective performance, greater persistence, and enhanced well-being. The fulfillment of basic psychological needs thus provides the energetic resources necessary to promote autonomous self-regulation, which in turn contributes to optimal functioning across various life domains. The relationship between need satisfaction and autonomous motivation is particularly evident in the process of internalization, through which extrinsically motivated behaviors become increasingly self-determined over time. SDT describes a continuum of motivational regulation, ranging from external regulation through introjected regulation to identified regulation and integrated regulation. Research indicates that environments supporting the satisfaction of basic psychological needs facilitate this internalization process, helping individuals transform originally external regulations into more autonomous forms of motivation. According to SDT, fulfillment of individuals' basic psychological needs affords them the resources and energy necessary to promote more autonomous self-regulation, which ultimately contributes to greater psychological well-being. This process is depicted in a theoretical model where need satisfaction leads to autonomous motivation, which in turn leads to well-being outcomes. This model has been supported by empirical research across various domains, including education, work, healthcare, and sports, demonstrating the consistent relationship between need satisfaction, autonomous motivation, and positive outcomes. The search results specifically highlight this relationship in the context of aging, showing that the satisfaction of basic psychological needs contributes to psychological well-being via autonomous motivation among older adults in both China and France. This suggests that the pathway from need satisfaction to well-being through autonomous motivation remains important throughout the lifespan and across cultures, providing further support for SDT's conceptualization of basic psychological needs as universal nutrients for optimal human functioning. The study found that when older adults' needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness were satisfied, they exhibited more autonomous forms of motivation for their activities, which in turn predicted greater psychological well-being. Basic Needs Theory, BNT, represents one of the 6 mini-theories within the broader framework of self-determination theory, specifically focusing on the 3 basic psychological needs and their relationship to psychological well-being and optimal functioning. BNT elaborates on the nature, definition, and functional significance of the needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness, proposing that these needs are universal and innate, and that their satisfaction is essential for psychological health across development and cultures. This mini-theory provides the theoretical framework for understanding how and why basic psychological needs matter for human motivation and thriving. BNT specifies the nutriments necessary for psychological growth, integrity, and well-being, and predicts negative consequences when these needs are thwarted. The theory addresses how need, satisfaction, and frustration operate at different levels of analysis, from specific situations to developmental periods to personality functioning, and how they relate to various outcomes, including affect, vitality, and life satisfaction. BNT proposes that the satisfaction of all three needs is necessary for optimal functioning, and that no single need can be neglected without significant negative consequences for psychological health. Within the broader SDT framework, BNT interacts with other mini-theories to provide a comprehensive understanding of human motivation and psychological functioning. For example, cognitive evaluation theory, CET, focuses on factors that facilitate or undermine intrinsic motivation, with particular attention to the roles of autonomy and competence needs. Organismic integration theory, OIT, addresses the internalization of extrinsic motivation and the development of autonomous self-regulation, emphasizing the role of all three needs in facilitating internalization. Relationship motivation theory, RMT, examines how relationships satisfy basic psychological needs, particularly relatedness, but also autonomy and competence through mutually supportive interactions. BNT has important implications for understanding and promoting psychological well-being across various life domains. By identifying the basic psychological needs that must be satisfied for optimal functioning, the theory provides guidance for designing supportive environments in education, healthcare, work, sports, and relationships. For example, in healthcare settings, practitioners can support patients' autonomy by providing choice and rationale, competence by offering clear guidance and feedback, and relatedness by showing empathy and care, thereby enhancing patients' autonomous motivation for health behaviors and improving health outcomes. Similarly, in educational contexts, need-supportive teaching practices can promote students' autonomous motivation, engagement, and learning. The concept of basic psychological needs within self-determination theory has been applied across numerous domains, demonstrating its practical utility for understanding and enhancing motivation and well-being in different contexts. By identifying the nutriments necessary for optimal functioning, SDT provides a framework for designing environments and interventions that support psychological needs and promote positive outcomes across life domains. These applications highlight the broad relevance of SDT's definition of basic psychological needs for understanding human behavior and psychological health. In health and healthcare contexts, SDT has been applied to understand and enhance motivation for health behaviors and treatment adherence. The theory suggests that healthcare that supports patients' basic psychological needs by providing choice and rationale, autonomy, clear guidelines and feedback, competence, and empathic understanding, relatedness, will promote more autonomous motivation for health behaviors. Research supports this proposition, showing that need-supportive healthcare predicts better patient outcomes across various conditions, including diabetes management, smoking cessation, weight management, and medication adherence. These findings have led to the development of need-supportive interventions for healthcare providers, aimed at enhancing their ability to support patients' psychological needs. In educational settings, SDT provides a framework for understanding how teaching practices can support or thwart students' basic psychological needs, and consequently, their motivation, engagement, and learning. Autonomy supportive teaching involves providing meaningful choices, explaining rationales for activities, acknowledging students' perspectives, and minimizing controlling language. Competence support involves providing optimal challenges, clear expectations, and constructive feedback. Relatedness support involves showing care, respect, and interest in students. Research indicates that these need-supportive teaching practices predict enhanced autonomous motivation, deeper engagement, better learning outcomes, and greater psychological well-being among students across educational levels. In workplace contexts, SDT suggests that need-supportive leadership, job design, and organizational cultures promote employee motivation, performance, and well-being. Autonomy supportive management involves providing choice within structure, explaining rationales for requests, and acknowledging employees' perspectives. Competence support involves providing appropriate challenges, clear feedback, and opportunities for skill development. Relatedness support involves fostering a sense of belonging and meaningful connections among colleagues. Research shows that needs-supportive work environments predict greater work engagement, job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and performance, as well as reduced burnout and turnover intentions. In the context of aging and elder care, the search results highlight the importance of basic psychological needs for the well-being of older adults. This research found that satisfying the needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness contributed to psychological well-being among elderly retired people in both China and France, suggesting that basic psychological needs remain important throughout the lifespan. These findings have implications for designing elder care environments and practices that support older adults' psychological needs, potentially enhancing their motivation for health behaviors, social engagement, and continued personal growth in later life. The definition of basic psychological needs within self-determination theory provides a powerful framework for understanding human motivation, behavior, and well-being across the lifespan and across cultures. By identifying autonomy, competence, and relatedness as universal psychological nutriments essential for optimal functioning, SDT offers insights into what conditions support or thwart psychological health and how environments can be designed to promote autonomous motivation and well-being. The extensive research on these basic needs has validated their importance across various domains, from healthcare to education to the workplace, demonstrating their practical utility for enhancing human functioning in diverse contexts. The three basic psychological needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, represent distinct but interrelated aspects of psychological functioning that together provide the foundation for growth, integration, and well-being. Autonomy involves experiencing a sense of volition and self-endorsement in one's actions, not independence from others. Competence involves feeling effective and capable in one's interactions with the environment. Relatedness involves experiencing meaningful connection and belonging with others. When these needs are satisfied, people are more likely to experience autonomous motivation, effective performance, and psychological well-being. When they are thwarted, people are more likely to experience controlled motivation or amotivation, diminished performance, and psychological distress. The universality claim for basic psychological needs has been supported by cross-cultural research showing that need satisfaction predicts well-being across diverse cultural contexts. While the specific expressions and pathways to satisfying these needs may vary across cultures, the functional importance of autonomy, competence, and relatedness appears consistent, supporting SDT's definition of these needs as universal aspects of human psychology. Similarly, research across the lifespan, including studies with older adults, demonstrates that basic psychological needs remain important throughout development, from childhood through old age. As research on self-determination theory continues to evolve, our understanding of basic psychological needs and their role in human functioning will undoubtedly become more nuanced and refined. However, the core definition of these needs as essential nutriments for psychological growth, integrity, and well-being remains a valuable contribution to our understanding of human motivation and behavior. By identifying what humans need psychologically to thrive, SDT provides a framework not only for understanding psychological functioning, but also for creating conditions that support human flourishing across diverse contexts and throughout life. If you haven't watched the Origins of Self-Determination Theory video on the card on the right, I invite you to watch it too. If you haven't subscribed to us yet, please subscribe. If you like the video, please give it a like. Don't forget to share this video with others. We'll see you again tomorrow with a video like this. Until then, stay tuned with Your Motivation University. Have a nice day. Bye.